I'll go ahead and make the motion. Oh, I'll second it. All right, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Let's go ahead and vote. Why am I not able to vote? Can't vote. It's not letting me. Click 4. Good job. Is that everybody? All right, it passes. Thanks for your patience, everybody. All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for Secure 800 Model 40 maintenance support. RFP P47416. Mr. Kirby, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Mr. Hurley, MARTA Board Committee, the MARTA employees. I, Torrey Kirby, Director of Technology Applications, am seeking your approval to authorize the modification of our existing contractual agreement for Secure 800 Model 40 Maintenance Support RFP P47416 with Johnson Controls. Thank you. They are the current provider of our maintenance support for our secure access control system throughout most MARTA locations. This modification will specifically allow us to maintain and support the current environment until all can be replaced via RFP in a new access control system. The secure system manages the secure electronic entrance and exit of MARTA facilities and secure areas. In addition, the system is also responsible for MARTA's employee and contractor badge management. As you can see, the original contract was awarded to Johnson Controls on November 1st of 2020 for 2 years at $91,770 and 41 cents for a term of 1 year with 2 1-year options for an additional $430,626, making the contract value $522,396 and 41 cents. The modification timing was a result of aging equipment requiring immediate attention due to broken gates and inoperable security doors in several locations. In an effort to properly maintain our current access control system and address ongoing vulnerabilities, we are requesting to renew the current maintenance support agreement with Johnson Controls for 2 years at $139,661. We're in the process of seeking your approval to solicit the replacement of the current secure system via RFP. Next slide, please. A financial breakdown of this request is as follows. The first line item is an emergency support due to lightning strike, which for 75 hours at $13,656. In a standard support agreement for 2024 at 180 hours for $34,740. Again, a standard maintenance support for 2025 for 180 hours for $36,670. And a subscription for Secure 9000 licensing for 2024 and 2025 for a 2-year term at $34,595. Parts as needed at $10,000 for 2024 and 2025 for a 2-year total of $20,000, giving us a grand total of $139,661. There is no DBE goal assigned for this single source procurement. Therefore, in conclusion, I am seeking your approval authorizing the contractual modification for Secure 800 Model 40 Maintenance Support RFP P47416, utilizing 100% local operating funds to increase by $139,661 for a 2-year term through January 2025. The new contract value will be $662,057.41. Next slide, I think that's it. And thank you. May I answer any questions at this time?
Thank you. I've made a motion for approval of this resolution, seeking a second. Properly second. Any questions or comments? I've got one comment. Can we get Johnson Controls to fix the access to the front door of MARTA headquarters?
We will absolutely make an effort to make that happen, sir.
All right, thank you. Al?
Tori, this is a contract extension, not a new contract. So my question is, it's customary for internal audit to review the pricing to be sure they're in line with our current pricing. I didn't see any mention of that. Hear any mention of that?
Ms. Holland was going to come and speak to that.
Good morning, Mr. Pond and board members. It is customary when we do a contract mod for internal audit to review for fair and reasonableness only when the price is $200,000 or above. In this case, the mod is less than. So we do a price analysis in our office.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, you mentioned that you were looking at an RFP to replace all this equipment.
Yes, sir.
Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, sir.
And what is your time frame on that?
That's the next resolution, Bill.
Well, that answered that question. But why 2 years then? I guess that's my question. And why replace this equipment?
Well, the equipment is aging equipment. We've had this equipment in large share since 2018 around the authority. So from a life cycle perspective, it's reached its life expectancy. And as we seek to replace it, it would, in most cases, require us touching and reviewing every gate, every door, replacing that equipment and/or upgrading the software behind those physical assets also. So as we go through the process of not only going through the RFP process, but the replacement process, we want to ensure we have enough time to get all of those things done, and that's why we went with the 2-year span.
So yeah, it's pretty obvious. I hadn't read this proposal yet.
This one we got it, but correct. You're correct. It's been in place since 2008.
Any other questions? Let's go ahead and vote on the motion. Motion passes. Thank you. And now, to satisfy Mayor Floyd's curiosity, let's entertain the next resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for an access control system, RFP P49262. Mr. Kirby.
All right. Thank you. We can pull the next one up. Awesome. Thank you. Again, good morning to Chairman Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, the BMC committee, and MARTA employees. I, Tory Kirby, Director of Technology Applications, am seeking your approval to authorize the solicitation of proposals for a new access control system, RFP P49262. Next slide. The purpose of this solicitation is to not only address aging and often failing equipment, but also continue searching for emerging technologies capable of competing in this space. As a result, MARTA will acquire a best-of-breed access control system capable of securing our current proposed and expanding MARTA footprint. The benefits of such a system will be in scalability, will be to accommodate various access types and the variety of application of secure doors, gates, facilities, and authorized access only common areas. As a part of our solicitation requirements, we typically, in MARTA fashion, include the appropriate rigor to ensure a well-tested and verified access system. Next slide. We expect the financial breakdown to include a 3-year base contract with 2 one-year options for renewal. This is using a combination of local, capital, and operating funds for fiscal year 25 and 27, fiscal year 28 and 29 budget years. In conclusion, I'm seeking your approval authorizing the solicitation of proposals for a new access control system being RFP P49262.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. And I'll entertain a motion for approval of the resolution. Properly moved and seconded. Any questions or comments?
How much money are we talking about?
We don't know.
We don't know yet. We're in the process.
You got an idea, though, right?
We do have an idea based upon the.
So if I can just interrupt, we do have an idea, a rough order of magnitude. However, throwing that number out now will ensure that all of the proposals come back at that number. So I think we can have a conversation maybe offline about what we think it would be, but I think it'd be, not favorable for the authority to throw that number out right now.
Good point.
When you advertise this, though, you put a range in there, though, don't you?
No,
No, we don't.
no, you just put the scope in.
Oh, you should put a range, you should give folks an idea. Well, anyway, I'm talking about contracts.
Yeah, for a lot of our construction contracts, the numbers kind of float out there, not to exceed numbers, but for something like this, we wouldn't put that out.
Frida?
If it's a stupid question, I apologize, but
No stupid
in some of the technology worlds today, I hear that we lease equipment versus purchasing it. Is this something that would make any sense at all to lease, or is it just better to purchase?
In this particular case, given how we use it from a security perspective, I tend to lean more to purchasing so that we can ensure that we can encapsulate those things and not have to worry about relying on a third party or renting that type of equipment.
Okay.
However, because it's an RFP, we're open to anything. We're going to investigate the best options available to us and make an informed decision.
All right, thank you.
Rod?
Yeah, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but the DBE goals as a part of this RFP, is that also written into that when that goes out, or is that something that's established when it comes back? Do you know?
So the Office of Diversity and Inclusion will give us a range later on in the process. Right now, we're just asking for permission to go out to the street. So there will be a DBE goal if it qualifies. Oh, I didn't see Paula come in. I'll let Paula speak to it.
Okay.
Mr. Nash.
All right.
So during this solicitation process, before it goes out in the street, we will evaluate the scope of work and come up with a DBE goal, but it's going to depend on if there's subcontracting opportunities, what industries we use. So we'll do that evaluation and methodology and determine if there will be a DBE goal assigned. I suspect that there will be. I just don't know enough about the scope of work to kind of tell you what the range will be.
And so will this be for all our accesses throughout the enterprises, or is this something that may be broken up into smaller pieces so that there can be other agencies that could be a part of this procurement?
Well, we're definitely looking at it for all of our access control capabilities. As far as opening it up to regional access, we haven't had that conversation as of yet, but we can absolutely take that under consideration prior to putting it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Seeing that there's no other requests for comment or questions, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Resolution passes. Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
Thank you,
Are there
Mr.
any other
Chair.
matters to come before this committee? Then we will adjourn, and Stacy, I think you are next.
January 18th, 2024. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 26, 2023. Could I get a motion and a second, please? Any discussion? Could we please vote? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of qualification statements for the procurement of material testing consulting services AE 50472, Mr. Prescott.
Morning, Chairwoman Blakely, Mr. Greenwood, sorry, committee and gallery, here today to solicit the resolution authorizing solicitation of services for proposals of procurement for material testing services. So next slide, please. So the current program is wrapping up a 10-year program, a 5-year base and a 5-year option that will end in this September with Atlas and Terracon. This program requires out in the construction realm of equipment testing and other material programming within the construction process, which is intermittent for us. So due to this specialized equipment and needs, we were requiring this on-call services to support our in-house staff, as we do not have all of the lab equipment and specialized equipment to support this program. So next slide, please. Scope-wise, again, material testing for construction services, field and laboratory testing, on-site testing and monitoring, review and evaluation of the field conditions, inspection and observation, evaluation of construction, and other specialized services. Basically, they're our eyes and ears during the construction process. So next slide, please. While they're out there doing this, what our program will be supporting similar projects to station rehab, the parking lot paver program, as well as the ongoing Summerhill program roadway work that's going on. We intend to solicit 2 consultants again, starting in FY25, with a 3-year base, 2 1-year options. The $300,000 per year is estimated for a total program cost of $1.5 million over that time frame. The funding will come from the Capital Improvement Program projects for the fiscal years, and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion will be reviewing the needs and give us a percentage during the pre-proposal process. Current contract has 25% utilization now in that contract. So next slide. With that, I'd like to request the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the consultant services, procurement and material testing consultants, AE 50472.
Thank you, Larry. Could I get a motion and a second? Motion has been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, could we please vote? Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I didn't want to miss a chance to speak. Normally, sometimes in construction contracts, this work is included in the contract for the requirement of the contract. You all have obviously made a decision to do that, to make MARTA responsible for that.
No, sir. It is included with the construction contract. We are doing our own QA/QC on our side to validate what they are doing.
Okay, so they have their own testing lab and they do their own work, and
Yes, sir.
we're doing the same thing.
Due diligence on our side.
Okay, and who makes those decisions about when you, I mean, because you get a report from them about this testing, right?
Yes, sir.
And then, and you're making a decision of when to check what they're doing and when not to check what they're doing?
We follow industry standards. We go out and do like a 10% sampling or specialized areas. So they do all of it, and we just do a sampling for QA purposes only.
Okay.
In the past, we have included it with our on-call consultant services as a supplemental service that included with their design services during construction. This is a supplement to go outside of those contracts as needed.
Okay, and what's been your experience with doing this? Have you found errors and problems? Is there history with needing to do this?
No, sir. This is a due diligence, 10% QA checked, just to keep the contractors up to par.
On that, though, let me just add, though MARTA doesn't have experience with it going wrong, we've seen examples across the country in different transit agencies where civil structures fail, where rail fails, and, you know, the fallout from that is a lot more than the cost of making sure that our QA/QC program is maintained.
Okay, but that's not, I mean, I understand that, I think, but I'm asking the question is, have you in the past had is there, I mean, have you found mistakes and errors or
No, sir. Everything that we've checked.
non-compliance or?
Our 10% that we've done has been within the industry standards of variances, so we've found no major conflicts.
No problems to,
No. which
But-
means that our
okay.
contractors are doing their job, so we're happy to do that.
Okay, and how long have you been have we always done this?
Yes,
Has
sir.
MARTA
This-
always done this?
This has been a 10-year program for this one that I've been aware of, so yes.
Okay, because the testing that's done by the contractor is normally they don't do it themselves.
Correct.
They hire somebody to do it, which is exactly what we're doing.
Yes.
So we're hiring two firms, so this is,
Again, it's only 10%, not 100%, so it is just a quality control check.
okay, thank you.
Any additional? Please vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Larry. Looks like you're up again.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of qualification statements for the procurement of geotechnical engineering consultant services, AE 50471. Mr. Prescott.
Thank you. Again, good morning. This program is very similar to the material testing, but this is the geotechnical engineering that supports this in parallel. So next slide, please. Similarly, this was a 10-year program, also 5 and 5, that again expires this September. So we're back again to extend. The WSP procured a golder during this time frame, and Universal has been ongoing. Again, specialized services, geotechnical engineering. We don't have the in-house staff to support this intermittent need to support construction and specialized programs. And so this on-call service is required to help supplement our program. So next slide. The scope, again, engineering-wise, geotechnical, subsurface exploration, geological mapping, geotechnical drilling, groundwater monitoring, laboratory testing, investigation engineering, structural condition surveys, blast and vibration monitoring, stability settlements for slopes, and overall inspection and coring out in the field that we don't do in-house. So projects that supported this was the CNG facility down at Hamilton Bus Garage. Modifying that facility to do a CNG facility, we needed the specialized services to modify an existing facility. Also, we plan on using it on the Bankhead station expansion because it is an existing facility and we will be going beyond the current footprint. So we will need this geological service to help us out with that. So next slide. Again, 2 more consultants going in FY25 to help support us with a 5-year program, 3-year base, 2 1-year options. A similar $300K per year for a total program of $1.5 million. Capital improvement program projects will support this during the fiscal years, and Office of Diversity and Inclusion will give us a DBE percentage during the pre-proposal services. So next slide. With that, I'd like to request this resolution authorizing solicitation of proposal for procurement of the geotechnical engineering consultant services, AE 50471. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Could I get a motion and a second? It has been properly moved and seconded. Any questions? Mr. Pond.
Larry, resolution contracts are fine. This is more of an observation or a question maybe for procurement, but when I look at both of these 2 contracts, they're $300,000 a year between 2 firms is a small amount of money, very small contracts in the industry. And I just look at the last group of firms. They're both national firms that have held. Both of those last 2 are huge firms, national firms. And I just wonder in that procurement process that somehow in the scoring system, it could be helpful for the small business firms, minority firms, the woman-owned firms to have somewhat of a scoring opportunity, because when you match up the credentials with the name players, with firms with 10,000 people, qualifications all over the country, and they try to match up with a smaller firm solely here in Atlanta, it's hard for them to compete with your scoring system. So,
Agreed.
and a lot of times those credentials are not work that has been done by the firms in Atlanta. They're from their entire array of experience. So just an observation. I would just challenge you in the process to, on these smaller contracts, to adjust your scoring system where the smaller local firms could compete with the national players, that's all.
Will do.
And just to piggyback on Mr. Pond's sentiments, how, and we can discuss this offline, but actually moving forward with that, like what the processes would look like to actually bring that to fruition. So thank you for that. Mr. Frierson?
Yes, I just had a question. I'm looking at the scope of services. So is this work done, I imagine all this is done prior to construction before the actual construction is done. Is that correct?
Correct. During, before and during, yes.
Before and during?
Yes.
All right. And so the reports that come out of this, who's the one that evaluates this? Is this, we do this for us, or is this something that the contractor looks at before they go out and do their piece, like you said, the testing and the drilling? How does that work?
Usually they do it for us, and either our in-house staff or our on-call consultants who are representing us on specific projects review it. They bring in SMEs, subject matter experts to review it, and then make the recommendations for the design and future design and construction.
Okay, so once this information is gathered, then they're kind of evaluate how they're going to put
Yes,
the
sir.
footprint down for what they're facing.
Yeah, we try to reduce the risk of unknowns by utilizing the service, so the contractor goes in eyes wide open on what they're going to be dealing with. And if we run into situations of unforeseen conditions, these guys are on call to help us resolve those issues quickly.
Okay.
Summerhill is an issue where we're using GeoGrid to help with holes, they're soft areas, rather than having them excavate down in a time-consuming manner.
Okay. And will we use this service also at the Indian Creek facility where we're putting in a new bridge?
Yes, sir.
Is that something like that?
Yeah, the foundations are associated with that, the embankment, everything we do expansion where we're touching virgin area that this comes into play.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any additional questions? Please vote. Motion passes. Thank you,
Thank
Larry.
you.
Next item on the agenda, resolution authorizing a modification of contractual authorization for technical support services for automated fare collection, AFC 2.0, AE 48067. Mr. Charlie Jackson.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, committee members, and Mr. Greenwood. Thank you for having me here today to present this resolution authorizing a modification to an existing technical contract that we have with AECOM. And next slide, please. So in 2021, the MARTA Board of Directors approved a contract with AECOM for technical services and assistance with putting together reviewing our fare collection systems, collaborating with us to develop the technical specifications for the RFP, and to support us as an agency throughout the RFP process. As part of this solicitation in 2021, it also included a fourth phase, which was technical assistance during the implementation of AFC 2.0. At that time, the board elected to wait to award phase 4 until after we knew the scope better for AFC 2.0. Next slide, please. So the request today is to add phase 4 to the contract to allow AECOM and their subcontractors to continue to consult with us and provide technical services during the design, testing, deployment, requirements tracking, and operations and maintenance planning for AFC 2.0. Next slide, please. So the request is, we are seeking board approval today to add to the AECOM contract AE 48067, over the next 3 and a portion of the 4th year. And listed here are the number of hours and the total cost of services for that contract. I return it back to Chair Blakely and ready for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Can I get a motion in a second? It has been properly moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, could we please vote? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, committee.
The next item on the agenda, a resolution authorizing modification of contractual authorization for right-of-way consulting services for the Summerhill Capitol Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project. Request for price proposal, P49477. Ms. Robin Boyd.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, GM Greenwood, members of the committee. Could you go to the next slide, please? So right-of-way consultant services are necessary to assist the real estate staff in the acquisition for the capital expansion projects. So in October of 2021, Gresham Smith was contracted to provide right-of-way acquisition professional services for the Rapid Summerhill project. In then the Cleveland Avenue Metropolitan Parkway, ART, that work overlapped with the Rapid Summerhill, and that required the acquisition for 61 parcels. So in June of 2023, in order to keep moving, we modified the original contract to include scope of work for the ART. If you could go to the next slide. So the Office of Real Estate now is requesting a second modification. The first contract amount was for $604,900. We're asking to add $625,000 for a total of $1,229,900 in order to finish both of the projects, the Rapid Summerhill and the Cleveland Avenue Metropolitan ART. The additional funds will come from local funds from FY24 and FY25 capital budgets. And just to be clear with the invoicing, when the consultant invoices us, they make sure everything is kept separate between the two projects. And then even further, on the Cleveland Avenue Metropolitan, the invoices are kept separate between City of Atlanta parcels and City of East Point parcels. Next slide, please. So we're requesting approval for the resolution authorizing a modification of contractual authorization for the procurement of right-of-way consulting services for the Summerhill Capitol Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project, contract number P49477. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Could I get a motion in a second? It has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, let us vote. Resolution passes. Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Next up on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of real estate consultant professional services, RFP P50473. Ms. Robin Boyd.
Could you go to the next slide, please? So again, the Office of Real Estate is tasked with acquiring the right-of-way, vacant land, improved property, and easements in support of the capital expansion projects. And our current projection is that we will need approximately 1,500 or more acquisitions through the years of the expansion. Some of these will come with tenants in place that have to be managed and relocated, and we also provide additional support for other departments in the authority. And the volume has increased so significantly with so many capital projects coming online at the same time that we're requesting on-call professional services for consulting services. So the next slide, please. The types of services we would be looking for are relocation specialists, right-of-way acquisition consultants, economic development analysts, real estate brokers, and any other that we need to support the capital expansion. And just a note here that especially for the relocation specialist and the right-of-way acquisition, they must adhere to federal guidelines and certifications. And the next slide. So individual contracts would be written as a not to exceed, but right now we've made a very large list of consulting firms that are qualified and in some cases that need the certifications, and we would like to draw from that list and have the ability to keep adding to that list over time. And then each firm would be chosen based on their project-specific expertise and availability for the jobs. And the next slide. So the estimate over the next 5 fiscal years is $13,100,000. And again, that would be, that wouldn't be a contract, it would be a not to exceed that we would work against. And it was a little harder to estimate out for the last 2 fiscal years, but we've included that to make sure that we can keep moving and keep up with the deadlines without interruption. And the next slide. So again, we're asking for approval for the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of real estate consultant professional services, RFP P50473. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Can I get a motion and a second? It has been properly moved and seconded. Any questions? Discussion? Mr. Floyd.
What's the difference in the right-of-way acquisition consultants here and the one in the previous resolution?
It's the same. This is to get us prepared now for all of the projects seem to be coming online at the same time. So this is to get us ready for that.
Okay, if I understand this right, excuse me, these are a group of people that you're going to call on when you've got a real estate problem that needs fixing somehow.
Well, no, so we know projects that are coming online in the within the next several months or next year. So we have an estimate of how many parcels we know we may need. It's an initial estimate for the projects, and it's too much for the real estate staff. I mean, on some of the projects, we'll have multiple right-of-way consultants. So we won't just even have one. Some of the projects are so large, we'll need multiples.
Okay, and so is this something that you will, I mean, it's analyzed as you begin a project? Or, I mean, the real estate issues to me are mind-boggling. I can't get them all in my little head figured out how to do. But, and it seems to me, and I can certainly understand the need for this as you're going along. What I guess I'm confused about is the relationship MARTA has with these people. At what point in time you decide, I can't deal with this anymore, you know, call somebody else?
Okay.
Is that is that something you make in your decision process early on, or is it as the problems come up? Because they're
Early on,
Early
in
on,
advance.
okay.
We're already, if we know a project should be ready for real estate to even begin, like get to the 30% or something around this summer, we now want to start being prepared, get the initial estimate. The number of parcels will change, the design will change, but we're trying now to get our lists in order and know how many consultants we'll need. And the consultants are the ones who will actually, everybody has to be notified. So many, you know, if there are 300 parcels, you probably have to send out 600 letters at the beginning to notify even people who may not be affected. And we just need help with that. And then they are the ones who go out and make the owner contacts. So they're the ones on the ground to start the process. And if it has to escalate, it escalates through the real estate department.
Okay, now we see you about once a month when you've got some kind of Summerhill project, right-of-way acquisition and all that kind of stuff. So this stuff is stuff you've been doing up till now, especially like on Summerhill project.
Well, we had the right-of-way consultant, Gresham Smith, has helped us with Summerhill and the Cleveland Avenue Metropolitan. But everything's going to keep overlapping, and they're getting larger and larger. And so that's why we need many consultants.
Okay, well, I certainly am not questioning the need for it because it certainly seems to be there. I guess I'm just a little confused as to how it meshes all together.
So, Mr. Floyd, if I can help maybe, to do all the front-end work, you know, the digging up of the titles, the negotiations, et cetera, they then provided to Robin and her team on the end to basically close it out and bring it to you all. So they're basically the entire staff that Robin and her team need to get these things done, if that helps. So they do all the unsung work on the front end, and we just don't have the bodies to do it here.
Like I said, Peter, I'm not questioning the need for it, okay? I understand that. I'm trying to put my head around what you all are doing and have done, like on Summerhill project, and where it meshes in with the use of these guys in the future and how that helps you. I think I understand that, but anyway, no, I certainly don't question the need for it because I can see, like I said, we see you every month with some sort of right-of-way acquisition issue or spending money on right-of-way acquisitions or something like that.
Well, we bring them in early. They will partner with us early. They will be involved at the table with us when we're meeting with the design team. And so everybody's ready to hit the ground as soon as we can make that first contact with the owners. After the design is ready, and then we come to you and we request the funds, then they can go start making offers. But they're involved at the very beginning. Now, if we acquire something like the relocation specialist that has tenants in place, then we would bring in, and again, depending on how much of that there is, we'll need multiple relocation specialists, if it got to that.
Okay, and Campbellton Road is an example of a project that's linear, and a lot of stuff going on there. And so what you're saying is you'll bring somebody off of this list in as you begin.
Yes.
Once it gets to the point where you start to say, here are the real estate parcels we're going to have to look at. So they come in and sit down with you early on.
Yes.
And so they're part of this team.
Yes.
As it goes all the way through.
Correct. And we're getting to that point right now.
Yeah, you're probably behind.
No, we've been working on that. So we've been doing that, the real estate, but we're getting ready to bring people in.
Okay, when the design starts on a project like Campbellton Road, are real estate issues make a decision in how that's approached? Are you involved in that? Like we can't do this because we got to buy a 40-acre site here if we want to do that, or 10 acres of this. Let's move it over here where we don't have to deal with that.
Yes, we've been very much involved over the last 5 years, where we get involved at the very beginning to like you said, if you can just move it here a little bit, because here's a challenge if you do it this way. So yes, we've been involved in the early phases. The project managers have been really good. We meet with them on a monthly basis for all of the projects. They're in planning, even the ones that are further down the road.
Okay,
We meet now.
How many people are on this list? How many firms are on this list?
Oh, right now, for the consulting, we probably have about 14 or 15, but I'd like the ability to keep adding.
Okay.
And always keep adding, because we'll need a lot of, and they're in different, like I said, some are relocation, some are real estate brokers, so we have a lot of different needs. And we want the list to be as big as it can. But again, we're not saying we want to spend that much money, but this would be a not to exceed for each person. The money is available for anything we need within this list.
$13 million, am I remembering that right?
Over 5 fiscal years.
5 years is a lot of money to pay consultants. You know, if somebody paid me that, I'd get questioned about why it was being used. So you're distributing that money over a period of years for different firms, and you all are gonna make the decision about how that all gets.
And this will go out, this will go out to solicitation, just there will be a process. It won't just be the real estate department. So there will be a process to make sure everybody's in place properly.
Okay, and how do they get paid? Is it time?
It is. It's based on time, on an hourly rate. But again, everybody has a different expertise, but it's on an hourly rate.
Okay, all right.
Robin, just before we turn to Al, I remember when you described it to me at one point, it was equal parts expertise and volume, so a lot of this work your staff could do if you didn't have that much else going on. But the other thing that we did was we moved the real estate team under capital so that this kind of coordination to a lot of the questions that Bill's been asking are handled up
Yes.
front, so it's part of the
Yes.
planning process.
Yes, we work very closely with we're working on like 17 projects now with the project managers, so we're all in sync and ready.
Mr. Pond?
And I think Al made a point up earlier about small and disadvantaged firms. This seems like a perfect opportunity to utilize people, especially in a specific area of town. Who you go after and what they look like and that kind of thing.
Well, and what we found with the consultants, like even the right-of-way consultants, there are so many that all work together, and they can work with this team tomorrow and this team today, so they all work together too.
$13 million, you're going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on property taxes.
Yes.
These guys are the ones that determine how much land is paid for stuff or the relationship with negotiation.
No, that's all based on fair market value appraisals. So they make offers that first of all, the real estate department authorizes the offers they can make. And those are based on fair market value appraisals. And then we make the final determination. They come to us and say, this is what's been negotiated. And in some cases, we have to go to the federal government for approval as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Valla, did you want to chime in before we jump to Mr. Pond?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we have 6 professionals in the real estate group right now, and so to Robin's point, this is a bandwidth issue as we've, taken on more projects in the capital programs. The first 2, of course, were Summer Hill, Clayton O&M were the first 2, and then we've added Cleveland Metropolitan, and so the bandwidth of the team is maxed out. So, we brought on Gresham Smith to help us with Summer Hill. Now we're having them help us with Cleveland Metropolitan. We have Clayton BRT in front of us, Campbellton Road, Clifton, a lot of volume, volume of transactions, and so we're trying to get ahead of that by adding additional resources. But the decision making in terms of which properties, that's done in conjunction with other teammates at not only real estate but also our planning teammates and legal and others. And the valuations are all fair market value per appraisal. So these consultants aren't recommending purchase prices that we should be acquiring at. So they are not. No. It's based on fair market value appraisals. And you'll see another resolution coming before you for appraisals, appraisers, because we're going to do an RFP for appraisers as well. We used to do roughly 30 appraisals a year, 20 or 30 appraisals. 13 we did, and now we're up to 128 we did last year. So we are totally over capacity on all the work that we're doing to support this capital program. So these resolutions support that work.
Thank you, Mr. Vallow. Thank you, Mr. Pond, for your patience.
I understand what you're doing, putting a budget in place for 5 years, and that's a smart thing to cover all of the services. My question is, and maybe you covered it, you will go out on the street with an RFP to select this array of consultants correctly, so they will be qualified and through your procurement process.
A solicitation, is that RFP? I don't know the terminology. but
Either way.
Yes, we are going out, and again, they have to be certified. Some of these, like the right-of-way consultant and the relocation, they must meet certain certifications. And we will also make sure we maintain, not only to add more, but if somebody becomes decertified, not to work with that.
But they will have to go through a competitive process. That's the
Correct.
question.
Any additional questions? Mr. Fryerson?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment, and that is that as y'all go through this whole process, I think it's important that the public see that there's a lot of things that's happening on the forefront of MARTA. These 17 projects are going out, and all this acquisition that needs to be done and evaluation that needs to be done shows that we're moving projects forward. Often I hear people ask, when things are happening, when will they start happening? Well, they're always happening, but this is what we have to do prior to this stuff coming out of the ground. And I'm glad to see that now we are really looking at expanding these projects. I mean, that's really what people want to see, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So I understand why it's happening. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Fryerson. Any additional discussion? Let us vote. Okay.
Madam Chair, my system does not show up that I can vote, but I vote yes.
Yep. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Ms. Boyd is up again. Resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of appraisal professional services, RFP 50452.
Next slide, please. So again, everything is based on fair market value. So we have to do real estate appraisals, and then we have those appraisals reviewed. There are other types of valuations we do, and all of the real estate appraisals and reviews have to be done. They have to follow federal guidelines. Whether we're using local funds or federal funds, we follow the federal and state guidelines for appraisals. We use appraisals for so many different things. We do the appraisals when a department in the authority needs one, but we have them for the acquisitions and dispositions. We support the TOD for their ground leases. And we also do, the Office of Real Estate does a lot of license agreements for fiber and telecom and billboard. We do easements for GDOT and the Beltline and Georgia Power. All of those have to be valued. And in addition to what we call a regular appraisal, for the capital projects and the acquisitions, sometimes there are maybe additional damages where we have to close a driveway or take some parking. And in those cases, there's an engineering cost to cure valuation that has to be done. And that would also be included with the appraisals. And the next slide. So as we just said, in FY 2019, we did 13 appraisals. And in FY 23, that went up to 128 appraisals because of the work for Rapid Summerhill and Cleveland Metropolitan and Clayton County as well. And this is just going to keep increasing. That was basically 2 projects. And again, we have 17 projects coming online. So over the next 5 years, we expect to acquire approximately 1,500 parcels and temporary and permanent easements. There will be more TOD RFPs coming online. And the next slide. So for appraisals, we're requesting $6,245,000 over the next 5 years. Next slide. This again will be a not to exceed. It's kind of a bucket that we may not spend all of the money, but we'll have it there. We have a large list of appraisal firms now and firms that do valuations. We'd like the ability to keep adding to that list. Again, some of them have to be certified, so we always make sure that they maintain their certification. And firms would be chosen out of that group for the specific request, like what their expertise is for that request. And a case for that is if somebody's valuing a TOD over a station, that's a different level of expertise than if we need a 200 square foot easement. And it would all be based on their reputation, certifications, industry standard pricing. And we will continue to oversee the appraisers in order to maintain the schedules because we'll have a lot of compressed schedules coming up. We want to make sure it's so critical that they adhere to the federal and state guidelines and in order to control cost. So the next slide. So again, we're requesting approval for the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of appraisal professional services, RFP P50452. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Could I get a motion and a second, please? It has been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion?
Yep, just a question, Peter, and maybe normally, I mean, these lists are important, okay? Who gets on them, who doesn't get on them? And normally when somebody on this board hears it is when somebody doesn't get on the list. And that's when we start to hear about it and what's going on and why it's there. And I guess I'm asking the question is, at what point or should people on this board be notified as to who's on that list and who wanted to be on that list and didn't get on the list? Or should we not ask that question at all?
I would prefer if you didn't ask it for a number of reasons, but.
Didn't ask it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But when the award is provided and the award goes out, typically in the presentations, you know who's added to the list. We do not usually go through who wasn't added because for whatever reason, if they didn't apply, they didn't submit, or they didn't qualify. But most of it's just like any other solicitation. You'll find out who won or who was placed on the list, so you'll have an idea. But the less you're involved into the decision-making of who actually is awarded the stuff before it's presented to you, the better for you all and the authority.
Sounds like good advice to me.
And I'd like to add that we do, like for the appraisers now, we'll use anybody and everybody who's available, who will work with MARTA, who's certified. With all the work that we're doing and GDOT's doing in the municipalities, it has been difficult to find enough appraisers to keep us moving at the pace that we're moving.
But I do think it's important to emphasize, and for not only this procurement, but the prior one, that these are RFPs. So this is an open public solicitation. There is no pre-list that's being created. So this is an open solicitation, and all of those that are invited or see the solicitation can submit their names and qualifications to be not only on this solicitation, but the prior one. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, my urge is you be careful because I mean, as a contractor, you know, when you pre-approve a list of who's allowed to do stuff, if I don't get on that list,
Understood.
that's when I start.
That's why I want, yeah.
Why am I not on that list?
Absolutely.
And so just, I mean.
No, understood. That's why I wanted to clarify. Yeah.
You know, because you mentioned that there are qualifications needed for people that are going to do this. So be careful for that, for our sake, for the board members' sake.
Totally.
Be careful how you do that.
Absolutely understood. And again, this is an open solicitation. There's no pre-list. There are folks that have asked to be on the list. and they'll get the solicitation, but it is an open public solicitation. All those invited.
Yeah, and to put a finer point, Mr. Floyd, on the question you asked, if you get calls from folks who did not get a contract, who were not awarded a solicitation, whether it be a proposal or bid, they all have a contract specialist assigned to those proposals, those RFPs, those invitations to bid, et cetera, that they should be contacting. And if they can't get in touch with that contract specialist, they should go and talk to Ms. Holland. They should not be engaging you all in that. You just pass them on to our procurement department, and they'll take it from there, because there is a appeal process that should be followed if they feel that they've been wronged in some way.
We're working everybody very hard now.
Ms. Scott?
You mentioned that there are state and federal guidelines for appraisals. Are there separate guidelines for counties?
For accounting?
For a county?
No. But again, the federal guidelines are how the appraisals have to be done, like an MAI appraiser has to do the appraisals. We follow those guidelines because also even the state guidelines are just as rigid as the federal, so even when we're using local funds, it's all the same.
So they're normally accessed or they're evaluated simultaneously, meaning the state and the federal guidelines will be used if you're appraising a property? Both will be used at the same time? Or do you determine to use state guidelines as opposed to federal guidelines?
They're pretty much the same. And so, but again, because the state is just as rigid, even when we're not using federal dollars, it's the same guidelines. And the appraisers have to follow those guidelines when they do the appraisals.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments, discussion? If not, let us vote. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, resolution authorizing the ratification of a contract for professional services for federal advisory services. Letter of agreement L49435. Ms. Melissa Molinex.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. Greenwood, members of the board. I'm here to ask you to consider this resolution authorizing ratification of payment for Cardinal Infrastructure, who is our federal lobbyist. Next slide, please. Cardinal has been working with us since 2021 on federal projects. You see here under these three bullet items, helping us with our grants, the competitive grants, and strategic counsel on lobbying and building the relationship with the federal agencies. Next slide, please. Since 2021, you can see here what we've accomplished with them. The number, when I last looked at it, we've won about $65 million in competitive federal grants since we partnered with Cardinal. And I'll tell you that, so we brought them on under an LOA, which is how we do our professional services for lobbyists at the state and local level. We did it at the federal level in 2021. You guys authorized that and then have since modified the contract. This past August, next slide, please. This past August, the letter of agreement was extended through the end of this year, but no money was attached, and so this is a correction that we need. It was an oversight back in August. And so the total contract value right now is $462,000. I think that's a pretty good, $65 million is a pretty good return on 462. But I'll share with you that, and some of the board members who've been here for some time will remember that we had a different federal lobbyist in Holland and Knight for at least 10, 15 years, right? And we did that through an RFP, and this firm was brought on because in 2021, through Manjeet, who had worked with them at a previous agency, because one of their principals, Sherry Little, was the acting administrator of the FTA in 2007, 8, and 9, and she actually was the one who wrote the New Starts program. that so many of our capital projects are going to be applying for. And so we thought it was important to have an agency expert with FTA, and so that's why we brought them on. As we've stayed with them and the Holland and Knight contract expired in August, what we've decided to do is to bring back to you guys a request to authorize us to solicit another round of federal lobbying contracts. So in the next, probably the next committee meeting, we'll bring the resolution to request authorization to solicit, and we'll put that RFP out. And it will be likely a 5-year contract. But we do need to clean this up. They have been working with us. I think that's the last slide.
Could I have a motion
Any
and a
questions?
second, please? It's been properly moved by Mr. Pond, seconded by Mr. Durrett. Any discussion? Mr. Durrett?
So, Melissa, when we extended the contract through the end of 2023 in August, we just had a brain cramp and didn't put any dollars to it? Is that what happened?
It was a time only. I'm not sure if what happened there, frankly. It was, it went to the July committee. I was out. And
I'm not looking to, I just want to make sure I understood that. And
there's been some transition on this because it's been sort of, it was initiated originally by capital projects, by Manjeet, but it was really managed by external affairs because of the federal lobbying piece. So I think that's where where the mistake slipped up. Capital is paying for it, but it's very clear now that external affairs owns it, is responsible for the contracting, the management, all the federal reports that are due, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I understand we're just ratifying the decision to pay them for the work that we asked them to do. And maybe you said this, but do we not have a contract with a federal teammate right now in 2024?
We do. We have Cardinal for 2024 that you guys have, everything's good on that.
Okay, so this is just backfilling that 3-month gap. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, let us vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Melissa. Next item on the agenda is a briefing by Mr. Ryan Van Sickle for the proposed service changes for April markup.
Hi. Hello and good morning. Chair Blakely, Mr. Greenwood, members of the Planning and Capital Programs Committee. I'm Ryan Van Sickle, Director of Technical Services and Service Planning, and I'm happy to brief you this morning on proposed changes for our April 2024 markup. Next slide, please. We'll do just a quick background and highlights. We'll talk about an overview of each of the proposed modifications, and then we'll move into next steps to close out the briefing. Next slide, please. So as you may know, MARTA has the opportunity to implement service modifications up to 3 times a year as we conduct our markup process. And the graphic at the bottom of this slide shows you just kind of a brief overview of how service changes are developed. This is also in our service standards for your reference, but essentially our staff review customer feedback, a variety of data sources, and propose service modifications to our bus service. When those are considered major changes, then we come to the board. We're required to go through a public hearing process under the MARTA Act and also under board policy. Once we complete the public engagement process, then we will return to the board, potentially after making some revisions to those changes based on what we hear from the community, and we'll request your approval to move forward with implementing the changes. Next slide. For the April markup, we're looking to propose changes to 2 routes, Route 192, Old Dixie Terra Boulevard, and Route 195 Forest Parkway, both of them in Clayton County in the vicinity of Forest Park. These adjustments will provide opportunities for our passengers to connect to new locations, particularly new in places of employment, and will be routing modifications to those 2 routes. Neither of these modifications will increase our operating costs nor our staffing requirements. Next slide. So the first of these, Route 192, we're proposing to shift a section of the route from Old Dixie Highway slightly east to Old Dixie Road. This is a change that's now possible due to the completion of an underpass below the Norfolk Southern Railroad, and it allows us to address requests that we've received for service to the Home Lodge extended stay, as well as the South Point Industrial Park. While Route 192 would be shifting from Old National Highway to Old National Road, another MARTA route that currently exists, Route 193, would continue operation on Old National Highway serving the affected segment. Next slide. On Route 195, we propose a modification that would expand the loop at the end of the line of the Route 195 that would allow us to provide our first regularly scheduled service into the Gillum Logistics Center. As you may know, the Gillum Logistics Center is a master planned redevelopment of the former Fort Gillum property and has a growing number of major employers, including Kroger, HD Supply, Cummins Engine, and more. And so this would allow us to provide hourly service to this growing employment area. One thing to note is that while it would allow us to operate through the redevelopment property, there is a small number of passengers along Forest Parkway who may see extended travel times as they will be riding through this larger loop. Next slide. To summarize, there's no impact to the number of weekly trips provided. There's no increase in our operating expenses, staffing requirements, or vehicle requirements, and a relatively small number of passengers on those two routes who would be affected. Next slide. So next steps would be to hold the public hearings, which will be scheduled for early February. Public hearing would be held in Clayton County. We'll also prepare a Title VI equity analysis to make sure that we have analyzed all of the equity outcomes of these changes. We'll review the public comment, and we'll return to the board to brief you on the public engagement period and make a final request for approval to implement the changes in April. And that concludes my briefing. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Discussion, Mr. Durrett.
Kylie, this is for you. Thank you for the presentation. If you would please remind me of what the timing, the schedule is for bus network redesign when we're thinking about, I mean, it's been a long time since we've heard about a change in a bus route, but we're talking about redesigning the whole system eventually. So if you could just simply remind me about what that timeline looks like.
So we're looking at the end of &25 at the latest, Jim, to make sure that we've had a chance to go back out to the public, go back out to the engagement. We were moving at a quicker pace until recently when we learned that there are still a couple of Title VI analysis issues that weren't working out to the degree we had expected them to. So going back to the drawing board in some respects for maybe 10% of the network, and this whole thing it's a holistic approach. So end of '25 to be sure, our intention is to have that service rolling on the street.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bill?
You said, talking about going through the old Fort Gillum, you said hourly service? Is that right? That bus runs once an hour through there?
Yes, sir. So this would be a modification to the existing Route 185 on its existing schedule, which is hourly service.
So at a bus stop, you missed it by an hour, or you just caught it, right?
Correct, yeah. So the bus will go through the base once an hour of the property.
Is that normal for this service? I mean, I thought buses run faster than that.
So there's a pretty, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I mean, so depending on what route we're referring to here, I mean, the system has a pretty wide range of frequencies. Route 195 has operated on an hourly schedule for some time. And so as an effort to implement this change without having any impact to the operating budget or the staffing requirements, then we're working it into the existing schedule. It's something that we'll certainly monitor with the potential of passengers connecting to all of these new employment sites, and could potentially come back and propose a change at another time to change that frequency.
With those frequency changes, would that also take the 4 to 6 months if it's not sufficient?
Yeah, so that's something that's the ridership and the factors that play into those recommendations are kind of constantly monitored. But as we implement through the markup process, so that 3 times a year process, then the process of developing those changes, getting the feedback, looking at the ridership, actually having the systems collect all the data we need to make a recommendation, and then carrying that through board briefings, public hearings, and so on is a 4 to 6 month process.
Okay. And then I have a question regarding the public outreach. What is our plan for robust communication with the users of these existing routes? And are we forming any type of collaborative relationship with Clayton County communication outlets so that we can just ensure that people are aware? And also, I know that with the BRT, if I'm not mistaken, Campbellsland, initially, one of the issues was having a place that was accessible to people to get there. So have all those factors been considered? What's the plan, et cetera?
So we'll verify that. I don't see a colleague from External Affairs here who's involved in scheduling that hearing. But
Okay.
we do have a process for scheduling public hearings that involves notification through a number of general outlets like our website, social media, other traditional media, but also some targeted outreach to folks who are on these routes in the areas that are affected. And we'll verify, but I'm sure that they would be held in an accessible location. That's something MARTA is very diligent about. Sorry.
For these kinds of hearings, we also put notices at every bus stop and along the route so that people who ride the route
Okay.
are aware. And we will be working with Clayton County and also with the cities impacted and the two CIDs that are down there to make sure that we get a crowd.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I'll add that the 195 in particular, we started that with, through connections with the city manager and the jurisdictional leaders, as well as some business leaders in the area. So it was about listening to them first and then starting to sharpen our pencils in terms of what we can do.
Okay. Did one of you guys have anything? No? No further discussion? Please vote. Oh, that's right. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? If not, I will adjourn the meeting.
like to call the Operations and Safety Committee meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the November minutes. Do we have a motion and a second, please? Moved by Hartage, seconded by Durick. Any questions, comments? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of small AC motor overhaul and repair services, and that'll be led by Doug Miller, Director of Rail Car Maintenance. Doug?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Doug Miller, and I'm the Director of Rail Car Maintenance. May I direct your attention to the agenda item number 2, requesting a resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of small AC motor haul and repair services, IFB B50273. Next slide, please. I will speak to these areas and present the resolution for consideration. Next slide, please. The small motor and repair service contract is a reoccurring effort that will provide uninterrupted flow of spare small AC motors to sustain the demands of daily repairs and preventative maintenance on the MARTA heavy rail fleet. The affected small motors are critical components in the propulsion, friction brake, and high vac systems. This contract will maintain adequate stock levels of spare small motors that are critical to the daily availability of the revenue fleet. In addition, the contract will support the Life Cycle Asset Reliability Enhancement Program, the LCARE program. Many of you may remember that this is the program we have where we change out components on a time cycle, and we do most of that work in-house. Our represented people rebuild the components, and these motors are used in those rebuilds of those components. Next slide, please. The requested resolution authorizes the general manager, CEO, or his delegate to enter into a contract for the procurement of small AC motor overhaul and repair services with RAM Industrial Services, LLC. This is a 2-year reoccurring contract with a 1-year option for a total amount of $287,641. This is funded with local operating and capital funds from the approved fiscal year budget. Funds for subsequent fiscal years will be included in subsequent annual budgets. Next slide, please. On November 11th, 2023, notice to bidders was sent to 5 vendors for this procurement. Notice of invitation for bids was advertised in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Georgia Procurement Registry, the Georgia Local Government Access Marketplace, and on MARTA's website. This is a firm fixed unit price contract. This means we pay a fixed price for the unit's overhaul based on the work required on each up to the limit of the contract. We only overhaul and pay for units as needed. On the opening bid date time of December 7th, 2023 at 2 p.m., 2 bids were received. RAM Industrial Services, LLC, submitted the lowest responsive and responsible bid in the amount of $287,641. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion assigned a 5% disadvantage business enterprise goal to this procurement, which was met. Next slide, please. At this time, I am requesting that the committee recommend to the full MARTA board this resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of small AC motor and repair services, IFB B50273, with Ram Industrial Services, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $287,641. Chairman Pond, I will now turn it back over to you for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I'll entertain a motion and a second for the resolution. Moved by Durrett, seconded by Hartage. Questions, discussion? Good job. Can we please vote?
Can you take me off? Yes, thank you.
Motion passes. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
The third item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification for body-worn cameras, video storage, and accessories, and that'll be led by Lieutenant Leroy White with the MARTA Police Department. Lieutenant White?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and the members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Leroy White, and I am the training commander with the MARTA Police Department. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 3. This is a resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for body-worn cameras, video storage, and accessories, P47663. Next slide. The body camera and taser are part of a 5-year contract, and it was initiated in March of 2021 with a term end date of February 2026. In March of 2024, we'll be entering into the 3rd year of this current agreement. The Axon contract has 3 components because it's part of a unique brand in TASER itself. And the components make up a unique ecosystem. And these components are the body camera, the TASER 7 conducted energy weapon, and the signal sidearm. The body camera increases accountability and transparency. It's also part of a cloud-based platform which satisfies House Bill 976 retention schedule, which basically requires police agencies to retain any body camera footage from public contacts for at least 180 days, and any body camera footage from investigations, accidents, or use of force for at least 30 months. The TASER 7 is a conducted energy weapon, and it's a less lethal weapon. And from a risk management perspective, it allows officers to basically stop a threat without taking a life. The exposures are typically less than 5 seconds, and the weapon offers full transparency. Supervisors are allowed to go into a system that we have called evidence.com, review any data from the system, memorialize that data, and use it later as evidence. The signal sidearm is a automated activation feature that allows officers to basically activate their camera by simply pulling their weapon from his or her holster. And the TASER 7's case, the TASER 7 activates the camera if the switch is activated and is turned on. Next slide. Some of the enhancements are Respond Plus, improved GPS, real-time live streaming, and a bi-directional communication, as well as a function called the Watch Me function. The Respond Plus allows for improved GPS location and accuracy, up to at least 75 feet more than the current technology that we have now in the current body camera, which it tremendously increases the accuracy for the officer's location. For example, I'm in headquarters right now. If my body camera was activated with this new technology, you'll be able to tell that I'm actually on a floor, opposed to just the current technology just having a dot at the 2424 Piedmont Road address. It offers real-time live streaming, which uses cellular connection, and I'll speak to that shortly. It also offers the bi-directional communication feature, which allows audible communication directly from the body camera, and it's hands-free. The officer can continue to do what he or she is doing without using their hands and communicate. Currently, we rely on radio transmissions, and in some areas, the transmissions are little to none. But this feature would allow us to have uninterrupted, hands-free communication. Also, this new technology allows supervisors to communicate with officers and basically coach them from abroad without being on the scene if officers are in need of assistance. It would allow officers that are out with units that are out with individuals that speak a language that the officer is not familiar with. It would allow them to request someone from the other side of town to translate and help them assist that individual that they're out with. But mainly, this new technology would help us because it's something that we deal with on a regular basis, on a daily basis. It would allow us to deal with mental health individuals that are going through a mental health crisis. These units would be able to basically have someone from the mental health profession on the other side of town log in, view what they're doing in the live stream in real time, and be able to give recommendations or advice to that officer while he or she is dealing with that individual. And lastly, the Watch Me function. This function allows officers to ask for support from either a supervisor, a dispatcher, or someone in our newly created real-time center, real-time crime center, and allow those individuals to basically tap in live feed and communicate with this officer while viewing the events in real time. TASER 7 revealed a study, and this study revealed that limited probe spread and missed targets were factors affecting its overall effectiveness. And unfortunately, our officers just witnessed the consequences of a missed target. And briefly, I'll explain. Officers were called out to a situation at a station, and they encountered an individual who was fairly large in stature who had additional layers of clothing on. This individual was irate. He had a sharp-edged scissors, and he charged at the officers in efforts to attack them. One of the units on the scene deployed his TASER 7, which is what we currently have now, and because there was an excessive amount of clothing, it didn't penetrate. That individual took 2 or 3 more steps, and he stabbed one of the female officers that was on the scene right above the eye. This officer was severely injured. She's not back at work now. But had we had that TASER 7, we might not be having this conversation in regards to the officer experiencing that incident, and she would still be at work. The TASER 7 is more effective. It has 10 individual probes with an effective range of up to 45 feet, which is almost double than the current technology with the TASER 7. It has enhanced probe accuracy and penetration, and it allows the officer to create his or her own spread in lieu of having your spread already created from the TASER 7, which is what we have now, which proves to be sometimes ineffective. The signal technology is another feature, and that allows the body camera to activate the camera as soon as the body camera is deployed from his or her TASER, just like the firearm technology that I explained earlier. Next slide. So the benefits are clear. It increases officer safety, and it's a great de-escalation tool. Live streaming allows officers to be located for a quicker response. The officers can communicate through the body camera and ask for assistance by simply activating that Watch Me button. And it's an alternative to radio when transmissions are challenging. And it's a reliable tool for de-escalation because when less lethal weapons are effective, this relieves officers of the need to transition to his or her firearm and possibly engage in a deadly force incident. Next slide. So the tasers are typically on a 5-year development cycle, and we upgrade them every 5 years for a new device. Taser 7 was introduced in 2019, but MARTA Police acquired the Taser 7 in 2021, which was basically 2 years behind the development cycle. The Taser 10 is an upgrade introduced in 5 years, and acquiring this device now would allow MARTA Police to basically be in on the front end of this technology. The current annual payment is $655,920, and it expires on February 2026. If we wait 2 years for expiration, the annual projected cost in 2026 would be $994,553.50. So the modification would provide MARTA Police with additional capabilities right now and aid in officer safety, increased communication, starting in February of 2024, for an annual payment of $797,387.20. And the chart indicates the savings. It has the amount of the annual payment in years 1 through 5, and the total amount of the contract on the lower level, and that's highlighted in yellow. If you look at the rewrite for March of 2024, the rewrite would be $797,387.20. The last two columns are what Axon gave MARTA Police as an incentive. And that the column that says alternative payment structure option 1 would allow us to continue to pay the same thing that we're paying currently, which is $655,920 for the first year, and we'll transition to $832,754 for each year thereafter, with the same contract total of $3,986,936. There's also option 2, which has another incentive, which would allow us to continue to pay the current payment that we're paying now for 2 years. And the third year through the 5th year, we'll pay $891,698.67. But if we wait 2 years, you see we'll pay $994,533.60. And the projected savings each year would be $197,146.40, for a total savings of $985,732. Next slide. So in summary, the contract amount is $3,357,744.50, which was executed in 2021, and it expires in February of 2026. The projected cost of the program in 2026, based on historical price increases, would be $4,972,668. The modification would extend the contract terms for 3 more years through 2029, for a new contract amount of $3,986,936. And the projected savings again would be $985,732 if we modify the contract now in lieu of waiting until 2026. Also, I want to note the Department of Internal Audit is currently conducting a cost analysis to determine fair and reasonable pricing. So respectfully, I'm requesting authorization for a modification and contractual authorization for body-worn cameras, video storage and accessories, P47663, in the amount of $629,191.50, for a 5-year total of $3,986,936. Mr. Chairman, I turn this matter back over to you.
Thank you, Lieutenant White. I'll entertain a motion and a second, please. All right, moved by Mr. Worthy, seconded by Hartage. far as the discussion piece, I'd like to add, we had a lot of discussion about this in the pre-brief a week ago, and it wasn't about bringing technology, and I commend the police department and MARTA for trying to have the best technology, because it's out there, and this is certainly an upgrade. But I think my question is, from a pricing standpoint, if we left the existing contract in place for 2 more years, could we access this same equipment, the TASER 7 and also the
We can't access the same equipment, Mr.
You
Chairman.
cannot.
However, it'll be at a higher cost. Also, don't forget the safety aspect of it. We have an officer that's out right now. Units responded, they tried to use that TASER 7 and it was ineffective. Had we had that TASER 10, that officer would still be here.
Right.
She's been with the agency for quite some time, and we don't have her back now. So safety is definitely one of the top issues.
Sure.
Why we need to act now in regards to acquiring this new technology.
No, I don't think the discussion was about the safety. I think this is definitely great to step up the technology and the capabilities. Just the question, you have an existing contract in place for 2 more years, just to clarify for the group, and you would not be able to provide this needed upgraded equipment with that existing contract in place. Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other? Yes. Jennifer.
Yeah, I think this sounds fantastic to be using technology to keep both our MARTA police force safe and the public. On the slide where you were showing the alternative 1 and the alternative 2, are you asking us to decide on the pricing schedule or just on the overall
No, ma'am.
cost?
I'm just displaying what the options are. Our command staff, they're talking that over, and they'll
Okay.
decide. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Durrett?
Yeah, my question is related to Jennifer's. Colleague, is this something that, that'll be decided by the finance group in terms of cash flow and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's definitely an internal conversation between MPD and finance. The bottom line remains the same. It's just, yeah.
Mr. Floyd?
Just one quick question. Under legal considerations, you say that competitive bids not, that MARTA access competitive bids not required for the acquisition of items unavailable in the open market. Why does that apply here?
I can speak to that if you want.
Yes.
So, so the reason it doesn't apply here is this was done as a single source. So the analysis was done that having a TASER 10 along with the Respond Plus for all the body cameras and the integration of all the units together in one seamless system can only be performed by this contract or by this vendor. And I'm summarizing the entire letter, but I think that's accurate. I'm looking at Jonathan to shake his head. Okay, so that was the whole point, is that's the integration of all the pieces together.
Okay. Ms. Blakely?
To follow up, so this is one of my questions. So why is this a single source contract?
Again, when you're using the TASER 10, the Respond Body Plus, as well as the current system we have with our sidearms, the only way to have all of them integrate and operate together based on what was provided, the information provided, is using this vendor and the TASER systems. We could have multiple separate units from multiple different vendors. They may not operate as seamlessly or with the efficiency that the APDs or MPDs looking for.
At what point do we evaluate for different vendors? Like, I have no issue with this.
Gotcha.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, so what happens is, the department, that's the word I was looking for, the departments will do the research to see who has these type of equipment and then do an analysis. Does it operate with what we have today? And then a determination will be made and brought to procurement. Procurement will also look at the information and then send on to the legal department, where Jonathan will review and make sure it does meet the requirements of a single source. So it's not just we pluck it out of the air. There is some back work done on the front end.
Gotcha, thank you. And then my follow-up question is for you. So in regards to the types of equipment, so the first one was the body camera, and then at the bottom of that slide, it spoke to the sidearm camera. So at what point is the body camera engaged, and what, I guess, I want to understand, like, So is the body camera not operating when the officer pulls the gun out of the holster? Like, you would need all of that context to be able to evaluate what exactly happened. So why wouldn't the body camera cover the events as they happen when the officer pulls a gun from the holster?
Yeah, so that signal sidearm activation is a device via Bluetooth that would basically, what it does is it automatically cuts the camera on when that device is pulled from the holster. The officer does have the ability to go ahead and activate the camera himself without that device being pulled from the holster as well. In addition to that, when that device is pulled from the holster, when recording begins, there's also a 2-minute buffer that's activated. So the camera captures 2 minutes before that device was actually pulled from the holster. So that whole incident is captured on the body camera to include 2 minutes back.
So how does it retro 2 minutes back if it's not activated until it's pulled out of the holster?
Yeah, so and that's a good question, but the technology allows that. So it's always on, but it's not recording until you activate it, but it goes 2 minutes back.
Okay.
Audio and video.
Okay. And is that sufficient?
Yes, ma'am.
Or, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah, it has helped us in incidents, critical incidents, as well as complaints.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Ms. Scott?
My question has somewhat been answered, but in regards to, from a technology standpoint, I believe it's the TASER 10. So the company that's providing the TASER 10, in 2 years, do you expect there to be a TASER 12? Because usually when technology, there's a continuous effort for innovation. So I realize where we are now, and this probably is the newest technology now. And if we wait 2 years, the additional expense. But do we anticipate a innovation in TASER 12 or 13 or?
Actually, absolutely. So the company technology is continuously evolving. There is a cycle, and the development cycle was typically 5 years. So 19, the 7 came out, 2024, now we have the 10. And so that's why we want to get in on the front of this technology now, because this is when the new TASER 10 is coming out. So we expect them to develop something and introduce it to the market within another 5 years.
And then I was trying to hear it, it relies on an internal battery, is that correct? Or does it use Wi-Fi at any aspect?
Yeah, it does use Wi-Fi.
It does? It
Yeah.
does?
Yes, ma'am. So the capability depends on the strength of the LTE within the area that the officer is in. But yeah, just like a cell phone, we dock it and the battery is charged. And that's one of the enhancements also that I didn't mention, but it has an increased battery life in this TASER, and this new body camera as well.
But it does rely on Wi-Fi from
It
whatever
does.
location
Yes,
you're in it.
Yes, ma'am.
And Lieutenant, I believe that TASER's a brand name, right? So they're the only ones that make this conducted energy weapon.
Yes, sir.
So that's why we're going with them. In terms of upgrades, we know that every 5 years is their cycle of upgrades, so we can anticipate that there will indeed be a 12 and beyond. And I think when we were talking last, you were explaining, Lieutenant, that some of the other policing agencies in the city or in the region are involved with this upgrade as well?
Absolutely, yes, sir. And I didn't speak to that. Thank you. Marietta and Atlanta have already initiated contract to acquire these new devices as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, personally, I love technology upgrade. That's my background. So I wanted to make sure that we understood that if we get in on this now, then we are ready for what the innovation is that's coming along. Because I know that company, whoever they are, they're working on another technology, another innovation next. So.
You finished?
Thank you.
One last question. Since this is an extension of existing contract, you mentioned internal audit would review the numbers,
Yes, sir.
and would that be done by the board meeting? Guess we can't speak for Emil since he's not here, so. I think it would be important when we approve these contracts of any size that internal audits can review that before the board makes final approval.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, and I can speak to that. We did provide internal audit with all the information that they need to be able to conduct that audit.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Can we please vote? The motion passes.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, there are two things. The November key performance information indicators are there for your information only. And the last item is a letter to inform the board of an award of mobility vans utilizing the statewide administrative contract, the DOAS contract. Does that need to be any comment or presentation?
No, not from us.
Okay. And as you know, this is a contract that the unit costs have already been established, and so that has already been competitively set up on a unit cost basis. Are there any other matters for this committee? If not, the meeting's adjourned.
At this time, we call to order the External Relations Committee meeting of Thursday, January 18, 2024. First, may I have a motion for the approval of the External Relations Committee meeting minutes from November 16th? Do I have a second? Let us vote. Approval of the minutes has passed. At this time, we will have a briefing of the Eggs and Issues BRT simulation. Jennifer LaRosa, Senior Director, Government and Community Affairs. Ms. LaRosa.
Good morning, Chair Scott, Vice Chair I, committee members, CEO Greenwood, and Ms. Mullinax. As we kicked off the 2024 legislative session, we created an opportunity to educate our state legislators and other VIPs, teaming with the Georgia Chamber Eggs and Issues event at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium as MARTA Rapid Simulation. The experience utilized dedicated lanes and police escorts to and from the event to give the feel and experience of BRT. Next slide. Here is the information flyer we gave out to each rider that morning. There were multiple goals achieved in this simulation. We were able to educate our state legislators on what BRT is as MARTA Rapid lines come onto service. This also allowed us to show portions of the MARTA Rapid Summerhill line, as you see here in the map on the right. And lastly, allowed us to express the need for camera enforcement through state legislation this year, especially with MARTA Rapid Summerhill coming in 2025. Next slide, please. Many, many meetings for months prior to this event with all the groups involved listed here culminated in a nearly seamless event transporting some 175, 200 legislators, staff, board members, and VIPs to Mercedes-Benz and back for the Eggs and Issues event. MARTA PD was also part of that planning and ready to activate if needed. Next slide, please. The invitation went out to hundreds of VIPs to join us for the door-to-door service. Announcements were even made in the chambers to the legislators during the legislative session that week. Next slide, please. There were pre-event coverage, as you can see here, all the way to the right in the AJC, or left in the AJC article, inviting all attendees the day prior to the event to join us, as well as post-event appreciation coverage by our City of Atlanta Delegation Chair, Representative Betsy Holland, and a group from Sovereign Realty and Management showing a little bit of the stadium and the buses that we used that day. Next slide, please. Here is the first few full, happy, warm buses that were leaving the very, very early hours of that morning. And just to give you a few of the list of folks that joined us, from leadership in both chambers, we had Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones, House Majority Whip James Burchett, House Majority Caucus Chair Bruce Williamson, House Majority Caucus Chief Deputy Whip Rob Leverett, Senate Majority Whip Randy Robertson, and Senate Majority Caucus Vice Chair and Rules Chairman Senator Matt Brass from Fulton County for his second ride on MARTA this year, for he used the rail system with the Georgia Leadership Georgia event that we did late in 2023 as well. Some other riders included House Transportation Chair Rick Jaspers and MARTOC member Representative Martin Montanahan. And then from our delegations, we also had the privilege of City of Atlanta Delegation Chair Representative Betsy Holland. Clayton County, we had Representative Rhonda Burnett and Representative Eric Bell. From DeKalb, Representative Billy Mitchell. And from Fulton County, Representative Deborah Bazemore and Senator Josh McLaurin. Next slide, please. On the left, you can see Colleen dressed very appropriately in a ski parka for that chilly morning, giving a bus full of warm folks a briefing on the service for the day, some BRT education, and MARTA Rapid Summerhill route coming in 2025. On the right, you'll see board member Thomas Worthy, no doubt helping a legislator download the MARTA app for further use. We'd also like to thank board member Rob Frierson for joining us in the MARTA simulation as well. Thank you. Next slide. There were blankets and blankets of thank yous. The bus was so nice, this was so easy, and can you do it every year for us to quote all of them, but we just wanted to point out a few here. Some that I wanted to just mention were the Speaker's new Chief of Staff, Terry England, that was very crucial as part of this planning process for the House, and he was very thankful for us doing this throughout the process. And Gracie was one of the bus drivers you see here with me that morning, and she said she felt like a princess with that escort. She wished she could have it every day, and driving the electric buses was really, really a treat. So we have been asked multiple times, and by nearly everyone who used the service that day, to do it next year, so we'll have to perhaps figure out some other education reason to do so. Next slide, and I'll take any questions, comments.
Do we have any questions for Ms. LaRosa?
Thank you so much.
No questions? Thank you. At this time, we have a briefing regarding the rail car reefing project. Richard Thomas, Director, Sustainability, and Stephanie Fisher, Senior Director of Communications. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Scott, Vice Chair Ide, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Mullinax, and other members of the Board of Directors. I'm Richard Thomas, Director of Sustainability, and it is my pleasure to provide an update on our first successful reefing project with our partners at the Georgia Department of Natural Resources Coastal Resources Division. The board's approval of this project last June kickstarted months of preparation to get 2 of our original rail cars ready to be deployed into the Atlantic Ocean, where they are already developing into reef habitats. Next slide, please. With assistance of railcar maintenance and the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance, we stripped the cars of any hazardous materials and contaminants and had them inspected and approved by the U.S. Coast Guard for deployment as artificial reef material. Last September, the rail cars were transported by truck from South Yard to the East Coast Terminal in Savannah to await deployment. This phase of the project was made possible by Kinky Sherrio, Silk Road Specialized Logistics, Stevens Towing Company, and the Georgia Port Authority. Next slide, please. Once on the coast, the rail cars were loaded onto a barge along with other reefing material to await optimum weather and water conditions needed for a successful deployment. Board Chair Thomas Worthy and Chief of Staff Melissa Mullinax got firsthand look at the process thanks to our partners at the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. Next slide. Please play the video. On December 21st, the barge traveled to Artificial Reef L, an established reef about 2 square miles in size and located about 23 nautical miles east of Asaba Island, where the rail cars will deploy in about 60 feet of water. The rail cars will provide essential marine habitats that mimic natural reefs for sea creatures including sponges, corals, sport fish, and endangered sea turtles. The reefing project was so successful that we are hoping to provide more retired rail cars for reef deployment, as well as find other inventive ways to reuse decommissioned rail cars as we make room for the new trains. Next slide, please. Excuse me.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, Chair Scott, Vice Chair Ide, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Mullinax, and committee members. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm the Senior Director of Communications. The Department of Communications worked very closely with Richard and his team and the Georgia Department of Natural Resources to generate a lot of positive traditional and social media coverage. Here are just a few of the headlines that we generated from June through December of last year. And here's a great article that Mr. Pond shared with us from the Northside Neighbor that was published just last week. Got the full page here. So thank you, Mr. Pond, for bringing this in. Next slide, please. MARTA and the Reefing Project were featured in 100 stories over 6 months, and almost all of that coverage was positive and neutral in tone and had an advertising value equivalent of almost $2.5 million. We saw 3 spikes in coverage. In June, when Richard came before you seeking approval and this project was first announced. In September, when the rail cars were loaded onto trucks and transported to the coast. And then in December, when they were finally deployed into the ocean. Our friends at 11 Alive provided the most coverage of the project, and the stories that were aired by WSB had the broadest audience, since most of their stories are also shared on national platforms such as MSN.com. Next slide. The project generated a lot of social media engagement. You may remember when I was before you last, I shared that the Reefing Project was the top social media post for the entire month of September. Here are a few posts that did very well, including the trip that Mr. Worthy and Ms. Mullinax took to bid bon voyage to the rail cars. Next slide, please. The Reefing Project created over 12,600 views on our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn accounts, and almost 3,000 people liked, shared, saved, or reposted our posts. WSB's posts about MARTA and the project had the broadest reach on social media, and our media partners at Georgia Public Broadcasting posted the most, and we thank them for that. Our social media specialist, Amanda Jackson, created a short reel with highlights of the deployment, and it was played over 60,000 times. The reel posted on Instagram was the most popular and had the most engagement. Let's take a look. Next slide, please, and please play the clip. Next slide, please. Richard and I thank you for your time today, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Worthy? She's not coming.
I just want to say thank you for an excellent presentation. And during the briefing, I had asked this question. I'd love for you all to share it with the other members of I think initially when you brought this to us, everybody was excited about the idea, but a little bit concerned about the cost. And I was really happy to hear, one, how you kept the cost down from what we initially thought it could be, and two, if we do this in the future, that you think it could be even more cost effective. And we got the great advertising value from it.
Well, Railcar Maintenance is in the process of developing their dispositioning plan, and they're looking at the most cost-effective approach to dispositioning our legacy fleet. But absolutely, we are looking at a variety of ways, but so far it appears that the reefing project was not only the most environmentally friendly, but the most cost-effective.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Floyd.
Some of it was donated concrete culverts and just other materials that were donated that they felt could achieve the goal of the artificial reefs. But most of it was concrete culvert. That is correct. Uh-huh. No. Well, I wish I could answer that. I wasn't there to see it, but the Coastal Resources Division will send their divers down to inspect it and just make sure everything is A-OK down at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah.
Good morning. I'd like to add just a little bit more context on the question around cost. We do know that we learned a lot, and that was the point of this, right? So we learned a lot about what's required to be how we need to prepare the cards in order for them to be reefed. When we started this process, we were following a guideline from a number of years ago, and that guideline says, oh, take all of these parts off and kind of strip it down to bare minimum. What we learned, though, is that the U.S. Coast Guard looked at these and said, hey, it's actually better for them, or they actually preferred that we leave some of the components of the cars on. So basically, we're cleaning them of all the oil and that sort of thing, but they even said to Richard, hey, next time you can leave the compressors on, or you can leave, other pieces of equipment on, because that really helps with the settling down into the ocean. So if we do this again, we will likely salvage the parts like we did this time. If there's anything that we really want from the car or need from the car that we want to salvage for some reason, we can do that. But there's going to be less maintenance or less labor required to strip them down and prepare them, and so that will reduce the amount of the cost as well.
Any other questions? One comment I have, and that is that, along the lines of what the comment made by Ms. Ide, is that we did determine in our pre-briefing that the cost, that the profit from the advertising did defer any costs, as well as it allowed us to recognize an advantage in the cost from advertising. Thank you.
Yeah, $2.5 million in advertising was generated, so a good return on our investment.
Thank you. Hearing and seeing no other questions. Oh, Mr. Pond,
I've got
sorry.
one another matter. I was thinking about the More MARTA program in construction. When we start construction, are we requiring the contractor to put signs adjacent to the site that say this is the More MARTA program, people seeing? Is that, I haven't noticed it, but I'm just asking.
Yes, that's a requirement, and there's a template. There's a design and a brand and approved language. You would see it right now. Well, it might be down from College Park, but no, it wouldn't be a College Park because that's not more MARTA. But Stephanie, where would it be right now? I mean, Summer Hill's under construction, but I'm not sure where, what's blocked off. But yes, that all exists.
When you look at these large city and county SPLOST programs, they make a point to have signage where the projects are to show the people that this is where your money is going. So,
yep.
Just a comment or a question.
Thank you.
One other comment or question. Did it also allow us to develop a EPA relationship?
Richard can speak to that on the EPA relationship, but I would say yes. And when Thomas and I went down, we went down on the 21st, right before Christmas, really because we wanted to make sure that we met the private company that was storing the cars. Couldn't keep it at the port, and because it had to sit there so long because of weather conditions, we wanted to meet this, the private company and who had the private berth to see if we couldn't negotiate something, a long-term relationship, and I think we've done that, so.
Well, I can add a little bit to that. MARTA, Railcar Maintenance, and the Office of Safety and Quality Assurance conform to the guidelines for artificial reef materials and best management practice set forth by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So to answer your question, yes, we did. There were guidelines that have been in place that we conformed to, and it was a success.
Thank you. Hearing and seeing no other questions or comments, are there any other matters to come before the External Relations Committee? Hearing none, we're now adjourned.
Thank you.